Hey there, Jason here from Simply Swider. Is your
Oh no,
Frigidaire
it stopped
refrigerator leaving
working.
your milk warm and your groceries spoiled? Before you panic or call an expensive repair service, I've got great news for you. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 8 most common cooling problems, and here's the kicker. About 80% of these issues can be fixed for under $50 or sometimes completely free. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group. Links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Now, here's the thing about Frigidaire cooling problems. Everybody thinks it's the compressor or low refrigerant, but trust me, after years of fixing these things, it's usually something way simpler and cheaper. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Your cooling system is like a chain, air has to flow, heat has to escape, and everything needs to start properly. When one link breaks, the whole system looks dead. Real world breakdown. Dirty coils and airflow problems make up about 60% of what I see. Component failures like fans and relays are next, and actual sealed system problems are pretty rare. So we're going to diagnose in probability order, not in parts shopping order. Here's how I want you to think about your fridge. It's like your home's air conditioning system. You've got four main players: the coils that dump heat outside, the fans that move air around, the compressor that's like the heart pumping refrigerant, and the electrical components that tell everything when to start. When your fridge stops cooling, one of these four systems has failed. We're going to check them in order from quickest and cheapest to diagnose first. So the biggest culprit I see is dirty condenser coils, probably 60% of the cooling problems that come through my shop. Here's what's happening. Those coils are supposed to release heat from inside your fridge, but when they're clogged with dust, pet hair, and kitchen grease, that heat gets trapped. Your compressor starts running constantly trying to keep up, and eventually it'll overheat and shut down. Here's how to check right now. First, unplug your fridge for safety. Then look either behind that bottom front grill, you might need to pop it off with your fingers, or flip around to the back of your unit. If those coils look like they're wearing a fur coat or are caked with dust and grease, we found your problem. Take a quick photo with your phone so you can see the difference after cleaning.
Blowing
I
all
had
of
this
the dirt and
customer
debris
last
off of
month
the
who
coils.
swore her
As you can
compressor
see,
was
my
shot
landscape
because it was
caked with
running
dust.
hot all the
I
time.
forgot to unplug
Turned
the
out she had
refrigerator,
three
so make
cats
sure
and
you
hadn't
do
cleaned
that
those
no more.
coils in 5 years. Looked like a fur coat down there. 20 minutes with a vacuum and brush, and that fridge was cooling like new again. Here's where most people mess up. They hear that compressor running constantly and think it's dying when really it's just working overtime because it can't dump heat properly. Next up is the evaporator fan motor. This is the main cause of that classic freezer's cold but fridge is warm scenario. This little guy sits inside your freezer and pushes cold air into the fresh food section. When it dies, your freezer stays sub-zero, but your fridge climbs up to 50 degrees or higher. Here's your quick test. Open your freezer door and listen carefully. You should hear a gentle humming or whooshing sound. That's your evaporator fan working. If it's silent in there, but you can hear the compressor running from the back of the fridge, your fan motor has likely failed. Pro tip, this test works best when the fridge has been running for at least 15 minutes. Another dead giveaway. Try spinning that fan blade by hand. If it's seized up or feels rough, the motor's shot. I remember this lady who called me panicking because her milk was spoiling but her ice cream was fine. Walked her through checking that fan, and sure enough, it wouldn't budge. 40 buck part, and she was back in business. Here's the test that'll save you time. If you've got a multimeter, check for continuity across those motor windings. You should see resistance, not an open circuit. Now, here's one that tricks everybody: the start relay failure. This little component helps your compressor get going, and when it fails, you'll hear that distinctive click clack sound every few minutes. The compressor tries to start, can't, and shuts back down.
Replace the
Most
wire
people hear
retainer
this
to
and think the
secure.
compressor's dead, but 9 times out of 10, it's just this cheap little relay. Here's the easiest test in the book. Unplug your fridge, pull off that relay from the side of the compressor and shake it. If it rattles like a maraca, it's toast. A good relay should be silent when you shake it. I can't tell you how many times I've saved people from replacing a $600 compressor when all they needed was a $20 relay. Don't ask me how I know that, but Frigidaire's PTC relays seem to give up after about 7 years. It's almost like clockwork. Another common cause is a stuck damper control. This is a motorized door that controls how much cold air gets from your freezer into the fridge section. When this thing fails, usually the foam seal gets sticky and glues the door shut, or the plastic gears strip inside the motor. Same symptom as the fan, cold freezer, warm fridge, but the difference is your evaporator fan is still running fine. You can
Make
check this
sure
by
you support the
removing that
control
damper
box.
cover in your fresh
Now,
food
carefully
sealing
lower down
and
the
seeing
control
if the door
box
moves when the fridge is
to
calling
give you
for
access
cooling.
to
I
the
had this
electrical
guy
plug
with a
in the
side by
top left
side who
corner.
thought his whole cooling system was shot. Turns out that damper door was cemented shut by degraded foam, and no cold air could get through. $50 part fixed a problem he was ready to spend $1,200 replacing the whole fridge over. If you're seeing a solid block of ice built up on your evaporator coils, that's the coils behind the back panel of your freezer, you've got a defrost system problem. This could be the defrost heater, the defrost thermostat, or the timer that controls the whole cycle. Here's what happens. Frost builds up normally on those coils, but when the defrost system can't melt it off, it keeps building until it blocks your evaporator fan or turns into a solid ice wall. I see this a lot when people try to chip away ice with knives or screwdrivers. Don't do that. You'll puncture the refrigerant lines and kill your
Next,
fridge
remove the
instantly.
screws to
The
release
fix
the
depends on
freezer's
which
rear
component
interior
failed,
panel
but you
or
can test the
panels.
heater and thermostat with a multimeter for continuity. This might surprise you, but a lot of people see all that ice and think they've got a refrigerant leak when it's actually the opposite. The system's working too well and not defrosting properly. The condenser fan motor is another one that'll fool you. This fan sits next to your compressor and cools those hot condenser coils we talked about earlier. When it dies, your compressor runs but gets extremely hot because it's not getting any air circulation. Eventually, the compressor overheats and shuts down on thermal overload, making you think the compressor itself is bad. You'll know this is your problem if that compressor is too hot to touch and you don't see the fan spinning when it's running. Usually, this happens because the motor burns out or gets jammed up with dust bunnies and debris. Way more common than you'd think, especially if those coils haven't been cleaned in a while. Less common, but still worth checking, is the thermistor. That's your temperature sensor. When this thing starts drifting or fails completely, your fridge gets confused about what temperature it actually is. You might see error codes like SYF or H1 or just really erratic temperatures that don't make sense. The way to test this is with a multimeter. You're looking for specific resistance values that
By
change with
properly
temperature.
aligning it on the
At room
house
temp, you
and
should see
snapping it
around
into
10,000
place.
to 11,000 ohms. And in ice
Connect the
water,
wire
it should
connector.
jump up to around 27,000 to 32,000 ohms. If those numbers are way off or you're getting no reading at all, that sensor is your culprit. The least common but most serious problem is actual sealed system failure. That's when you've got a refrigerant leak or the compressor mechanically fails inside. Here's how you know. The compressor runs 100% of the time, but temperatures never drop, or you see weird frost patterns on the evaporator coils, like just one corner has ice and the rest is bare metal. This is where you call someone like me because it requires EPA certification and brazing equipment. But here's the reality check. If your fridge is over 10 years old and needs sealed system work, you're probably looking at replacement rather than repair. The cheapest real fix, cleaning those dirty condenser coils, costs you absolutely nothing except some time with a vacuum and brush. This is probably the best return on investment you'll ever get with appliance repair. Don't buy any special coil cleaners or tools. A regular vacuum with a brush attachment and maybe a coil brush from the hardware store is all you need. The compressor start relay runs anywhere from 15 to $60 depending on your exact model. This is hands down the most common unnecessary expensive repair I see. People replace $600 compressors when they just needed this little $20 part. Make sure you get the right one for your compressor model and don't fall for those universal 3-in-1 hard start kits on modern efficient compressors. They can actually damage the windings. Evaporator fan motors typically run $40 to $120. Not too bad considering it'll fix that whole warm fridge, cold freezer problem. The install's not too complicated if you're comfortable taking off that back panel in your freezer and dealing with wire connections. Just make sure you get the right CFM rating for your model. The damper control assembly will set you back 50 to 150 bucks. It's a bit more involved to install since you're working in that tight space in the fresh food ceiling, but it's definitely doable if you can handle a screwdriver and follow some wire diagrams. Way cheaper than the $300 plus labor you'd pay for a service call. For defrost system parts, you're looking at $30 to $70 for the heater, 15 to 40 for the thermostat, and if you need a control board to run the whole defrost cycle, that can jump up to $100 to $300. The individual components are usually pretty straightforward to test and replace if you've got a multimeter. All right, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise if you need to replace parts. The good news is most of these fixes are way cheaper than calling someone like me, and definitely cheaper than buying a new fridge. Here's the breakdown on the most common parts you might need. Now you can see right there on your screen some of the most common Frigidaire models that run into these cooling problems. Maybe you'll spot your own fridge in that list. The Gallery and Professional series seem to throw that SYF error pretty regularly when the evaporator fan goes bad. Side-by-side models have that damper foam issue I mentioned, and the older top mount models are notorious for start relay failures after about 5 to 7 years. That's how you tackle Frigidaire cooling problems. Start with those dirty coils. It's free and fixes more problems than you'd think. Check your fans and relays before you assume the worst, and remember that most of these repairs are way cheaper than buying new. Here's something most people don't know. This failure pattern isn't unique to Frigidaire. Anytime you've got fans moving air, coils releasing heat, and relays starting compressors, the same problems show up across brands. The symptoms and fixes stay pretty consistent. Before you go, do me two quick favors. First, if this video saved you money, share it with anyone you know who's struggling with appliance problems. You might just save them hundreds of dollars. Second, I've got a complete playlist of appliance fixes that covers everything from dishwashers to dryers. The link is right up there in the corner. Most of these repairs cost under $50 and can be done in your spare time this weekend. It sure beats having a repairman come out and spending several hundred for them to fix it when it could be something so simple. If this helped you get your Frigidaire cooling again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.